Good morning, friends. Matt Greer here for Monday Morning Music with Matt. Thanks for tuning in. Lovely to see all of you, if I could see all of you. It's a beautiful day in my office. I rode my bike into church this morning, and it is a gorgeous day. Somebody already said to me this morning, well, I'm from Kansas City, so I'm evidently supposed to be in a bad mood this morning. I can't really get so exercised about the Super Bowl. I was never much interested in the Chiefs growing up. I was more interested in the Royals. But anyway, if you are a Kansas City fan, I hope that you're feeling okay this morning. We have a special guest this morning, and before we bring him on, I wanted to talk about a couple of things coming up and then play a video of something gorgeous to get us going this morning. And as far as things coming up in the music ministry, there is no live stream concert this week. We are actually, if you've been in the building at all, most of you probably haven't, but we're in the middle of an HVAC project, which is going to be wonderful once it's completed. And actually, as far as the sanctuary is concerned, we'll make things safer because the air exchange will be better. But they're kind of in the midst of all that. So no live stream concert from the sanctuary this week. However, next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday, which is unbelievably Ash Wednesday, our friend Joel Bechtel, cellist, is going to do a solo recital, which will be just kind of perfect, I think, for Ash Wednesday. So a week from this Wednesday at noon, we hope you'll tune in for that. We also hope you'll be looking to see what other offerings we have for Ash Wednesday. There will be drive-through at two different times on Ash Wednesday, an opportunity to pick up ashes. There'll also be a live streamed Ash Wednesday service at 6:30 p.m. That's a week from Wednesday. Kind of a lot on my mind this week is something that is kind of related to the music ministry at St. John's. We have two ensembles in residence, as you may know. One of them is the New Mexicords, and the other is Quintessence, which is a chorus that I direct. And of course, everything is on hiatus. Our usual season of concerts is not happening, but we are doing, as I hope you are already aware, a festival this coming weekend for Valentine's Day that is called Love Virtually, and it'll actually officially begin with a preview with me, kind of like this, on Friday morning at 9:30. But then Friday night, things will kick off with a virtual cabaret concert on Friday evening at 7 o'clock Mountain Time. Wonderful stuff going on Saturday morning, Saturday evening, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. And in addition to, let me just pop up a couple of photos here. On the left, you see Apollo 5, who are doing a concert live from London that our registrants are going to have access to at noon our time. That's on Valentine's Day, the 14th. Underneath that, you see Paul Smith, our friend, is going to be leading a singing event with Claire Stewart from Apollo 5 on Saturday morning. Below that, you see Jocelyn Hagan and Tim Tkach, who are both composers in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, who also are husband and wife and have a pop duo called Nation. So they're going to be involved in that. And then otherwise, on Friday evening and Sunday evening, we are having a couple of virtual cabaret concerts. They'll be a little bit different in flavor, but we have solicited homemade videos of love songs from people, from Quintessence members in Albuquerque, but also from friends all over the world. And so you see some of those faces there, including, if you see the couple that is, I don't know how well you can see this, but if you see the couple that is holding the baby, that's Emily Dickens and Dingle Yandel, who were members of Otis 8 and been to Albuquerque many times, and their baby Wilbur. And they did a video for us from London. Also involved in the cabarets are Bettman and Halpin, Bradley Ellingbo, Adrian Danrich, Ken Miedema did a lovely video for us. And so, great excuse to tune in next weekend for all of that wonderful content. If you cannot be involved in these live events, all of these are live events, they will be available to you if you register for the festival afterwards. It's only $50 for all that wonderful stuff. And if you go to quintessence-abq.com, you can sign up. I am going to get us going this morning by playing a video of one of the groups that will be featured next weekend. And some of you will, I hope, remember Apollo 5, who are an a cappella group from the UK under the umbrella of kind of the Voces 8 Foundation and those folks. But they were here last February doing a concert on music at St. John's. And in fact, it's kind of in our memory the last thing that we were able to do concert wise before everything shut down. And they're going to be our special guests next weekend for Love Virtually. I'm going to play an arrangement of theirs. This is actually an 80s pop tune that I just love. If you remember the kind of the synth pop band called Yazoo, this is a tune called Only You, and I hope you enjoy it. Apollo 5 singing Only You.
Looking from a window above, it's like a story of love. Can you hear me? Came back only yesterday. I'm moving further away. Want you near me? All I needed was the love you gave. All I needed for another day. And all I ever knew. Only you. Sometimes when I think of her name, and it's only a game, and I need you. Listen to the words that you say, it's getting harder to say. When I see you, all I needed was the love you gave. All I needed for another day. And all I ever knew, only all I needed was the love you gave. All I needed for another day. And all I ever knew, only you. This is gonna take a long time, and I wonder what's mine. Can't take no more. Wonder if you'll understand. It's just a touch of your hand behind closed doors. All I needed was the love you gave. All I needed for another day. And all I ever knew, only and all I ever knew, only you.
Love that tune. Love that arrangement. So hope you will join us next weekend if you can for Love Virtually. You'll get to hear that song and some others from Apollo 5. Also coming up this Saturday, as it's the second Saturday of the month, is our Jazz Vespers service, which we have been doing for over 10 years now on a monthly basis. The second Saturday of every month, 5 o'clock, that'll be live streamed from our sanctuary. And in preparation for that, I'm very happy this morning to welcome my friend Robert Law, who from the beginning of that has been the music director for Jazz Vespers and continues to be. And he is a fantastic jazz musician, as most of you know. And he is joining us this morning from his home in the Northeast Heights. Good morning, Robert. Oh, you're muted, like a
Oh,
good guest. All right.
okay. You came up rather quick on me there, so
Sorry, I'm glad you
had
were
to
in the
find the
room.
button.
Nice to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Robert, you've been a good friend of ours and familiar to us in the music ministry. As I said, we just last month at Jazz Vespers in January celebrated 10 years of doing that every single month, which just blows my mind. We started in January of 2011. And I'm so happy that you have been the person that has been so involved in making that happen now on a monthly basis. I'm curious because I kind of know some of your background, but just to start off, so we might know you a little better, two things. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And how did you first find your way to the piano?
I grew up in the Chicago area. I lived there until I started grad school in New Mexico. And I started piano actually after I was taking about 5 years of accordion lessons.
I
So
did not know that.
yes, the accordion was a big deal in those days, and was a big deal in my parents' cultures. And so, when it was time to pick instruments, my brother got to pick the guitar. He was older, so he was privileged. I had to take the accordion, and my sister got the piano. So I kind of did some self-teaching. I would as I was taking the accordion lessons, and actually I was studying classical music on the accordion. That was a big deal. There were a lot of classically trained accordionists, and there were jazz accordionists, and so there was a lot of crossover. And so I just started picking out melodies on the piano that I was doing on the accordion, and I started taking formal lessons when I was about 12, and I haven't looked back since.
I'm curious, did the accordion give you some sort of foundation for how chords and harmony work just by the nature of that instrument?
Absolutely. Actually, I learned how to add my own harmony to melodies. I was being taught by a professional accordionist who played gigs, and he
Mhm.
showed me how to block melodies with chords, and so what I learned how to play uh, commercially on the accordion, and I just transferred all of that over to the piano simultaneously. And the style of music that's often associated with George Shearing, the block chords in the right hand beneath the melody, with the left hand replicating the melody an octave lower. Well, I really learned that technique on the accordion,
Huh.
and I just went right to the piano and did it there. I didn't realize that anybody was doing that, in the jazz world. I just learned how to do it. And so much of my foundation in harmony came from those experiences.
That's interesting. So you took piano lessons, and I assume those were mostly oriented towards technique and classical repertoire. Is that how you started? And if it was a changeover to you to get interested in jazz, how did that occur?
Well, the initial lessons, yes, they were technically oriented. Had to learn how to use my left hand differently. That seemed to go pretty quickly. I was a rather lazy student at age 12. And so one of those kids who the teachers would recognize as possibly having some potential if only they would practice. So I sympathize greatly with kids who have that issue. And finally, I was given a little kind of a boogie woogie piece to play on the piano one time, and I wasn't doing wasn't having much progress. And then as I showed up for my lesson one day, the teacher had the previous students sitting there playing that very song for me. And like, this is how it's supposed to sound. And I was really embarrassed by that. So I went home and practiced and got it down in a week. And after that, I kind of changed my approach. I became a little bit more serious. The uh, the jazz cross, well, it wasn't jazz at the time. It was just kind of commercial music. It just naturally occurred. I did that on my own. It wasn't formal. And finally, when I began playing it for my teacher, uh, it turned out that the teacher really got to a point where she couldn't do anything with me anymore.
Mm.
And in terms of where I wanted to go, and she
Yeah,
recommended I move on. So, but mostly, I've never taken lessons in jazz. Okay,
really.
everything I've done, I studied books and manuals, and I listened mostly to records, and I played along with recordings of bebop players and Thelonious Monk, especially in the early days, and that was how I learned jazz. I learned it on the streets, basically.
The mean streets of, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So did you go away for undergrad in music, or did you do college? Did you major in something else in college?
I did major in music. I was a music ed major, and I, strangely enough, I was playing string bass in high school,
Uh-huh.
and then I switched over to cello, and so I began taking formal cello lessons, and I became a cello major in
Really?
college. Yes, and you had to, if you're going to be an instrumental major in our college, you had to declare uh, a major based upon some either band or and piano was not considered an orchestral instrument. It was considered a you could um, either you were a piano major or you were a voice major, a choral major, and you could use the piano in that context. So I just stuck with the cello throughout 4 years of music school and college at Chicago Musical College of Roosevelt University in downtown Chicago. And I was able to snag a gig with the composer Bill Russo, and he had a pretty hot band called the Chicago Jazz Ensemble, and it was a 20-piece jazz ensemble that utilized four cellists. We had a full cello section,
Wow.
and it was an experimental orchestra, and we did very little improvising. It was just typical kind of an orchestral approach to jazz, and I worked my way through college playing with this orchestra. We did concerts with Jerry Mulligan. We were on stage with Miriam Makeba. We did a whole slew of jazz operas that Bill Russo wrote, and we performed these all over the Chicago area, and and I was kind of like, wow, I was in a total admiration zone of Russo's writing talent, and I was a budding writer myself, and he let me write compositions for the orchestra, and we did some of them. One of which got on TV. And so it was quite a learning experience for me. And those players most of them were studio musicians from Chicago. So it was
Hmm.
just like, wow. I was like 17 years old when I started with that band. And it just blew me away.
Wow. How did your parents feel about you majoring in music?
Oh, they thought it was great.
Did they?
Yeah, it was something my mother really wanted for us, and uh, as it turns out, yeah, my mom was kind of our booking agent. We had a family band, my brother and
Oh,
myself,
really?
and my dad started playing drums, and so we encouraged him. He took lessons, and we had this family trio. And but I remember, I guess the most notorious thing that we did was when I was about 16, my mother booked us into a bar. And so my brother and I went down there. We had another guy playing drums with us. I think he was of proper age, but the two of us were still teenagers. And we were playing in this bar, and my uncle drove us over there. We kind of sat at the bar and was kind of chaperoning for us, and then the police showed up, and and some of the neighbors had complained because they said there was a riot going on in the bar, and it was just a noisy bar, and we were playing jazz, and we saw the police pull up, and we quickly ducked out. We hid in the booths, and my brother went into the washroom and locked himself in the washroom, and I was hiding in a booth next to a drunk, and it was just really weird. So yeah, we learned it on the streets,
I
and
guess you did. Yeah.
I would never let my own kid do that.
Let alone book them in
That's
yourself.
right.
Yeah. So what about after college? You had a music ed degree. Did you start teaching at that point, or were you having too much fun and success playing?
No, I got a job as a elementary school music teacher, and I did that for 7 years. And I also enrolled in graduate school, and I got a graduate master's degree at the Chicago Musical College in music education. But I continued to write, and I was hired to direct the jazz lab band at Roosevelt University during that time. So I spent 6 years as the band director, and I wrote and directed, wrote for the band and directed the band, and until I decided to come to New Mexico to seek a graduate degree in physical anthropology.
So what took you to deciding to do a graduate degree in physical anthropology?
I was always a science person, always a nature
Okay.
person. I grew up in a rural, semi-rural environment on the outskirts of Chicago where there was a lot of prairie and marshes, and I was always
Huh.
wandering around in nature, and I just developed this interest in science and in biology, and I felt there was something, there's part of me that needed to pursue something in addition to music. And so I got interested in biological anthropology. I did obtain a master's degree at Roosevelt at the time, and in anthropology. I wanted to come and study it more deeply here in New Mexico. And I was in a PhD program. I didn't finish the PhD. I got interested in science education, and I transferred all of my science credits to science teaching certification. And then I obtained a job at St. Pius High School, where I taught science, primarily biology, for 34 years.
34 years. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, when we met, you were still teaching at Pius. I
Yeah.
had no idea you had that much time teaching at that school. When did you retire from that?
Well, that was in 2013.
Okay.
And I started the gig. I was hired to teach band.
Oh,
I had
really?
been, yeah, a friend of mine started a band program there in 1977. And he was, he had a music store, and he started little band programs at different elementary schools around Albuquerque in the private schools. And then he got this thing going, and he couldn't keep it up. He was too busy in his own schedule. So he asked me, would you just take that over? And so I would come in 2 or 3 days a week and teach the band. And in the last week of school, I think in 1979, we were asked to do a concert before the student body. So I got up there and had the kids play a half-hour program, and the guy who was going to be principal in the following year called me into his office and asked me would I be interested in doing this, as on a regular basis. And I said, yeah, but I need a full-time job. And so we negotiated, and he found out I had all this science background. And so he said, what if you taught biology and band? And so that's what I did. So I taught the band,
Wow.
and I was teaching biology. And then I picked up the next year, I was teaching chorus for a couple of years. And then I started teaching after school, giving lessons to some of the kids who wanted to do jazz. So we started a jazz combo. Well, then a few of the other kids who were more classically oriented said, well, we would like to have a woodwind ensemble. Can we do that? So I would meet with them on my lunch hours. And so we had a woodwind quintet, and we had a jazz ensemble, and we had the regular concert band, uh, and after about 9 years of that, I had to we moved the school across the river, and I had to decide I can't be doing all this music and all this biology. I was also teaching honors biology and
Wow.
doing things statewide in science paper competitions and with students. And finally, I decided I'm just going to teach science because I really enjoy teaching science. I didn't enjoy teaching music. It was too much work. I was rewriting. I'd buy these arrangements, at the music store, and I take them home. And if I didn't have enough French horn parts, I'd be transcribing them for
Sure.
alto saxophone and doing all that kind of stuff. Although I did pick up a few French horn players and bassoonists, and I switched some of the percussionists over to low brass, and I did what I had to, what most band teachers do, under these circumstances. But it was a lot of
Yeah,
work. I was spending all my time writing music, and it was craziness.
I believe it. Choir directors and band directors, especially in schools, make fun of each other incessantly, but band directors work really hard. I know band
Yeah.
directors work the logistics of the instruments, the seeing after the instruments, the repairing, the number of different facets you have to know, and then filling in, like you said, writing parts. It's yeah, I'm glad I never had to do that.
Yeah. We were also asked, we mostly gave, formal concerts, but at one year, the football coach asked us if we would perform at halftime for one of the football games. And so I said, well, okay, we got this. I spent the whole day organizing this thing. We got parents, we hauled over music stands and instruments and all the stuff. We got the kids. And at halftime, we played a bunch of songs, rah, rah things, and a week later, the coach came up to me and said, "Hey, when are you going to bring the band to one of the games sometime and perform?" And I says, "We performed last week." He says, "You did?" That was, and I said, after that, I am never going to play for any athletic event again, and I didn't.
There you go.
That was the end of our spirit band type of performance.
One performance.
Yes, that
So
was it.
to lead us into talking about Jazz Vespers, I'm going to play a video, and this is from Robert and his trio doing a Wednesday live stream concert for us back in November. Robert, what would you tell us about this tune I'm going to play?
This is Speak Low, I think, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And it's become a jazz classic. I think it was written by Kurt Weill of Three Penny Opera fame,
Right.
and he wrote this thing, and it's, I don't know if it was an obscure song during its time, but jazz musicians have seized upon it, and it's become a jazz classic. So we decided to put that one in there, and it has a somewhat long form to it. Most popular songs from the 1940s were 32 measures. I think this one's about 64 measures or so. So there you have it.
Okay. This is the Robert Law Trio playing Speak Low.
One, two, one, two.
It's a great, so great. That was Robert Law on piano, Colin Dubel on bass, and Cal Haynes on drums. Robert, first of all, do you like to watch recordings of yourself playing? Yeah, unmute yourself and tell us how much you hate it.
Yeah, I
There you
said
go.
no. You get too critical. He said, "Oh, I could have done that better," or
Yeah.
I'm listening to the sound quality, and says, "Well, it sounded better if you were there. You had to be there,"
Oh,
sort of thing. But um, and I start thinking about, well, I could have done something else here, but you, you can make yourself crazy.
you can make yourself crazy. So, I mean, I have, and I'm sure I've told you this. If I could do anything in music that I don't do, it would be to be a jazz pianist. I am in awe of people like you and Jim Arend and other jazz pianists that I just love. So, two things. I mean, you finished doing the cello in undergrad, and then had a whole varied career teaching all kinds of different music. But at some point, you must have gotten really serious about the piano again. Was that going on all along?
Absolutely. When I was in high school, I started teaching the piano,
Hmm.
and so I made enough money every week from teaching the piano to cover my tuition expenses for college. So, and then I was still working gigs, the family group, and I started meeting other musicians, and so I was working a lot through college, as most of my colleagues in college were too. We were all gigging. Chicago was a great place to go to school
Hmm.
and to be a working musician. So I was doing that, working with the orchestra, various orchestras on the cello. I was starting to do musicals. So, and that's where jazz came in handy, because I would just make up my own piano scores for musicals. I could come in and sight read some of these musicals just by looking at the lead melodies, and I would look at the chords written below and use my ear and the chord constructions that I saw in the piano parts and just make up my piano parts and imitate what I saw. So, and on longer run type of shows, I'd start out just playing my own parts, and eventually I learned enough from the piano score to incorporate more of what the original composer had done. So I did a lot of that. That was a very good musical experience for me too. So yeah, I was playing piano throughout college, working my way, just having this parallel career in music ed and in jazz,
Right.
and most of us were doing that,
Uh-huh.
who were jazz players.
Yeah. Um, so it was over 10 years ago now, something more like on the order of 11 and 12, that I was thinking about what new we might bring to the music ministry at St. John's. And our pastor at the time, Craig Cockerell, and I were talking about it. And I was always interested. I've been a jazz fan since I was in high school. And I was just always interested in those churches that seemed to do some sort of worship service that incorporated jazz, because I was fascinated by the idea of the creativity that is inherent in jazz and the improvisation and how that might play out in a worship service. And so I think, Robert, I heard you playing in a worship context at St. Luke Lutheran. Would that be right?
That's exactly
Um,
right. Yeah.
Okay. And so I just kind of checked it out and thought about the idea of how we might do that at St. John's. And you were amenable to talking about it. And then we kind of, we did a couple of these services that you really helped design. And then we kind of got serious about raising money to make it happen. And lo and behold, 10 years later, except for a brief hiatus during lockdown, we've been doing this every single month.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
how was that for you, incorporating that into your musicianship, or how do you think of what we do in Jazz Vespers and the what jazz brings to a worship service that other music maybe doesn't?
Well, jazz brings a certain authentic spirit to the worship service. It's from the heart and the soul, literally, and it's in the moment. It's very, in that sense, it's contemplative. I've been playing jazz in churches for decades.
Hmm.
I actually started, my first church gig was in a small Methodist church in Chicago, on the north side of Chicago, when I was 20 years old. And I would play during Eastertide for several years before I moved here. And in Albuquerque, I played for various denominations. But I discovered at one point at one of the churches that playing jazz was a meditation for me, and my mind would go completely, just totally focused on what I was doing, and to the point where I would do things like forget to swallow, and I get kind of drooly, at the end of it, because I was just so intent on what I was doing. And I would play for prayer services during week, during which there would be a extended meditation. And I found out that I found myself in a more deep contemplative state when I was playing music.
Hmm.
And so that was a tremendous awakening for me. And so when I'm picking hymns, for instance, for Jazz Vespers, now I'm looking at the content of the lyrics and I look at the style of the song as what can we do that allows us to be creative, but still not over the top. I have to strike a balance between the spiritual needs of what we're doing and the artistic needs of the musicians, and that's the challenge each time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know whose idea this was at the very beginning, but it's been kind of the structure ever since we started that we do the worship service proper with the jazz arrangements of hymns that you do and other special music incorporated. And you improvise underneath the spoken prayer every time we have that service. But then once the service proper is over, we just let you guys do a set of standards. And
Yeah.
whoever thought of that idea was brilliant because you've got on Saturday evening, if you've got a singer and a jazz combo, why would you not want to hear a set of Gershwin or Cole Porter or something like that?
Absolutely. Well, that was your idea, so
Oh, gee,
pat yourself on the
what a
back.
brilliant idea!
And I like it. In most other churches that I've played at, that was it. We would close on the final hymn, so to speak. Maybe do a postlude of some kind and short postlude, and then call it quits. But I like the idea of the 20-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute set afterwards, and it's to me, it's not separate from the service. It's a different approach, to kind of a continuation afterwards. And I know when I go to church, I always at my church at the Cathedral of St. John, I always sit and listen to the organist afterwards. And I don't go stand out outside and talk to people and rush out and get coffee. I want to hear the music. And I feel that a lot of the folks who come to Jazz Vespers have the same attitude. They want to hear that little set afterwards, and then I think it keeps people around, and it really helps build community. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, it's been strange for all of our worship services since lockdown. As I've been saying, it's like we're running a TV studio right now, and I'm very proud of everything that we have been able to keep going and the quality that we've been able to maintain, and that's mostly due to some of the other staff we have right now. Jim Aaron, who looks after our sound, and Shay Perry, who looks after our live stream and our video. I don't know where we would be without those two people, quite frankly. But we took maybe 6 months off from Jazz Vespers, and now we're doing it like we do our other worship services live streamed. And of course, we've got one this Saturday at 5 o'clock Mountain Time. It, do you miss the people in the room as much as I do, and the energy you get from them?
Absolutely. Jazz derives its energy, well, partly, from within, but it really helps when you're in a live setting. And that's why you like to do concerts, you like to do club work, because there's a certain energy that's flowing. And it's, I guess, in Asian culture, you would call it chi. A kind of energy flowing that you can't put your finger on it, but it's there, and it's there whether it's jazz or classical music. It's always there, and so it's a little bit harder. So when we do Jazz Vespers, in this isolated situation, it's like doing recording session, and you end up being a little bit more careful. And a little bit less spontaneous. My guitarist friend Michael Anthony mentioned we worked together on the CD for Jazz Vespers, and the Seasons in Jazz, Seasons of the Church. But we were talking when we took a break during the recording session, how you have a different set of chops that you use for recording. It's a little bit, you hold back a little bit. You're a little bit more careful. You're a little bit more studied about it because you you just don't go out on a limb as much. Uh,
Because you know it's going to be preserved. Is that the deal?
no, the spontaneity. This I think it's just that the spontaneity doesn't work for you, and sometimes spontaneity works great.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes you make mistakes, and so you
Yeah,
don't want to make mistakes on recording sessions because then you have to do another take, and
gotcha. Yeah,
you might have a solo that was otherwise good except for that one or two notes. Now sometimes these days with digital recording you can go back and fix a few things and re-record things. It's not it's not totally authentic, but that's the way they do things these days. But
right.
nonetheless you're still a lot more careful. So and that's how I feel in these
Uh-huh.
Jazz Vespers recording sessions.
Well, hopefully before the end of 2021, we'll have at least some people back in the room with us. And I know I've also talked to our other partner in Jazz Vespers, Diana Hughes, who's a fantastic singer and basically serves as song leader in addition to performer for Jazz Vespers. And I know as a singer that is difficult not to have the energy coming back at you. I know that she's missing that especially. You touched on one thing a couple of times that I want to ask you about because I think that musicians who are classically trained and kind of in that box are really scared of the idea of improvisation. And of course, improvisation is what jazz is about within a structure, right? I
Yes.
think the only class, and people can disagree with me, but I think these days the only classical musicians that are trained to improvise are organists,
Yeah.
and that comes from a long tradition of playing in services and having to fill time. But there's also all kinds of schools of organ playing that improvisation is taken very, very seriously. And so, what is it about improvisation that you enjoy, and how do you get over being terrified by improvisation? I guess is what I would ask you, if you ever were.
I'm not terrified of improvisation. I'm terrified of sight reading.
Well, there you go.
uh, you know, yeah, I had several years ago. I had some gigs with what was then the New Mexico Symphony,
Uh-huh.
and they needed a jazz player to do some pops concerts, but they throw some things at you, to kind of fill in, uh, and they would give you. I would get the charts like 2 days before the concert, and I'd be up to 2 o'clock in the morning practicing, and I always admired
Mhm.
the symphony players. I read this stuff, and I'd be woodshedding late at night, and I had to teach the next morning too. So it was crazy, and that's just a hard thing. But if you start with improvisation young, and it's just part of your musical vocabulary, it's like language. It's kind of like maybe the Suzuki method of violin
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
instruction.
Yeah, interesting. We have one question from in the chat. I'll put it up from Sean Kasich. Hi, Sean. And Sean is a big fan of Jazz Vespers. He says Robert has had a prolific jazz career and is a great in the New Mexico jazz community, in addition to playing with other greats like Jerry Mulligan, you mentioned. Anybody you would love to play with that you haven't yet? It's kind of like asking who would you invite to a dinner party from history. So, living or dead,
From
who would you love to
history.
play with?
Oh gosh, I would love to have played with Ray Brown, who was the bassist, fabulous bassist, uh, who was for many years associated with Oscar Peterson. And Oscar Peterson
Mm.
was a major influence in my early piano studies. And I just admired Ray Brown. Everything I admire about bass players, I first really heard it in his playing, and that's what I'd like to have my own bass players try to achieve, that kind of synchrony between the string bass and the piano. Uh, yeah, that would be a pretty good experience. But you know, there's such great jazz musicians right here in New Mexico. It's just totally fulfilling. Bobby Shue, Michael Anthony. I mean, I could go on and on. And I feel honored and to be able to occasionally sit down with these people and perform or just do some jam sessions.
Yeah. Well, I want to play one more video of the Robert Law Trio. And this is also from your concert here in November, concert that you did with bassist Colin Dubel and drummer Cal Haynes. And tell us about this tune.
Okay, this is a composition by the saxophonist John Coltrane called Naima, and it's a very different kind of song than we just did. This is more what I say esoteric. It's harmonically challenging. It goes through a whole variety of keys, and anything that John Coltrane wrote or played is incredibly complex, and so. And it's a challenge, but that challenge also inspires creativity.
All right, this is the Robert Law Trio playing the John Coltrane tune Naima. I know sometimes the reproduction, what folks are seeing at home, both video and audio, is not the best. So thanks for putting up with that. And know that all of that concert, which was a fantastic concert back in November that Robert and his trio did for us, and all of the live stream concerts that we've been doing on Wednesdays, as well as all of our Jazz Vespers worship services and our Sunday worship services, are just accumulating on our YouTube channel. And you can enjoy them anytime you want to. Robert, it has been such a treat to get to chat with you a little bit this morning. And we are so fortunate to have you making music at St. John's. And I hope that continues for a very, very long time.
Thank you for having me, Matt. And I enjoyed the discussion. And let's just keep making music.
Okay, let's do it. Thanks, Robert. So, folks, just a reminder that Jazz Vespers is this Saturday at 5 o'clock Mountain Time, live streamed on our YouTube channel. And so you'll have that to look forward to. Wonderful music. And our preacher is Reverend Dr. Scott Sharp, who's been doing that with us for a little over a year now. I guess it's hard to keep track, but it's always a joy to hear him as well. And then one final pitch for the Quintessence Love Virtually Festival, which is happening February 12th through 14th. If you go to quintessence-abq.com, yes, quintessence-abq.com, you'll be able to register, and we hope to see you there. We will not be doing a Monday morning music with Matt, as it's a day off around here next week, but we'll be back the week after that. And we hope we'll also see you a week from Wednesday for a live stream concert from Joel Bechtel. Thanks for tuning in this morning. Have a good day. Bye.